I asked the guys to give their kind of an update of what happened on the missions trip. If you've ever been on a missions trip, you know the difficulty of trying to fit your missions trip into of 2 weeks into a half-hour segment, especially when there's 3 of you that are actually supposed to talk. And so what you're going to see and hear is not even a small percentage of what actually took place, but it's the best they can do to keep it in this timely fashion.
Hello Adelphi, thank you for your support in sending me to Germany. I really had a good time hanging out with John and Spencer. Getting to know the ratings was really good, very helpful. Linnea and I are thinking about foreign missions as a good possibility in our future. I'm not sure when or where or how, but the Lord will show us when He is ready. So on that front, this trip was very helpful to me in many areas. During our time there, we were able to spend several days with different missionaries from around the area. Bob works closely with these other missionaries, and so while we were traveling back and forth from different locations, I took that time to ask specific questions, mission-oriented questions that would better inform me of what I'd be getting myself into if the Lord did lead us to missions. So being able to ask questions such as how do you operate within the culture to reach the culture, what are the cultural differences, things of that nature was helpful. Some of those cultural differences that we did experience would be just the German people in general are somewhat cold. If you mess up, they just say, hey, you did it wrong. They're just very blunt with it. Germans are very neat, clean, tidy people. Their roads are in pristine condition, unlike what you see here in Wisconsin. But as far as food goes, everything was good except for this one food that we had. It was a potato ball, and you poured gravy on it, and it looked really good. And I cut into it, stuck it in my mouth, and that thing was so slimy. I didn't enjoy it. The texture was hard to get over. So all the other food was good, but that potato ball got me. One of the biggest things that I did learn on this trip was just to put myself out there. I'm not the kind of person that likes to jump into new things right off the bat. I like to explore what's going to happen. I like to know a battle plan. And so jumping into something brand new is just not my personality. But with this trip, I had to force myself to do that. Before the trip, Bob had called me and was explaining the different ministries that he wanted me to get involved with. And I had told myself, whatever he offers me, I'm just going to do it. That way I get the best cultural experience, the best ministry opportunities that I can take. And so he had called me about several things, and I just forced myself into those positions. One of the things that I was uncertain about was working with a translator, and that kind of scared me. I didn't really know what I was getting into. Probably should have practiced, but it seemed to go smoothly in the moment. I had 2 times to work with a translator. First was in a gypsy church where I was able to give my salvation testimony. Then I was able to give a short encouragement from 2 Corinthians, that God is the God of all comfort. The next ministry opportunity that I had with the translator was working with a kids program on one of the nights. I was given the story of Ehud and Eglon, and I had to use an interpreter to tell that story. Storytelling with an interpreter was kind of difficult. When you've got the story moving, you got the story flowing, and then you've got to stop, wait for the translator to translate. It was a little rough in that area, but it was good. So the biggest thing that I would say I learned was just to put myself out there. The Lord has those opportunities there for a reason, and there's something that we can grow when we take those opportunities. So this has been just a quick update. Just wanted to share my appreciation for you sending me on this trip, your support, and praying for us while we were there. We really had a good time. I will see you when I get back for the summer.
want to thank you all for supporting us and praying for us as we were over there in Germany. First day I was going to look through our itinerary, and we changed it up a little bit. It was kind of shocking. We got there on Thursday, and that was my first big plane ride, and I believe Spencer's first plane ride. And it was exciting. We had a couple exciting kids behind us the whole time. I don't know if everyone else got it in the back of their neck, but I had a couple kids screaming most of the time, or crying and hitting on the back of my chair. So for, I don't know, 9 hours trying to sleep or sit still and get comfortable was kind of difficult, but it was good overall. I didn't really know what to expect on a long plane ride. But I do thank you for praying for us. Thursday we got there, and it was about an hour trip from the airport to Neutraubling, which, how many of you read where the ratings left? How many were following the itinerary? Okay, no one? It's just me? Okay. I think when we read Neutraubling, it looks like Neutraubling or something like that, but it ended up being Neutraubling. He told us once we got to the city where he lives. Let's see what you got here. So we arrived. Is this their church building? Okay. They've been there for, I believe it was November or December. They moved to their new church building, and it was pretty small, but it was double the space that they had before, which the other building was just up the street. And I don't want to take all the time here. I'm going to jump in and out with Spencer here, and you kind of know the pictures that are up next. Thursday we were supposed to have a Bible study, and we kind of got situated. We took our showers, got cleaned up, and then we headed to Bible study, and I think we were the only ones there, weren't we? There's another missionary helping the Radinks. Their last name is Lepedo, and I believe they're at Crown College with the Radinks. Was it at the same time also?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So they went to school together. So they're kind of co-missioners there, and they go back and forth preaching. I think this month, is the Lepedos, so he did a lot of the preaching and leading the music. But we showed up on Thursday, and no one was there for Bible study. We set up for, I don't know, a dozen people, and it was just us three guys, and then Bob and Todd Lepedo. So we kind of just talked about the different cultures that we'll be coming across during our trip, which it was good. It wasn't what we were expecting. And I think Daniel kind of touched on it in his testimony, just how he likes to have a rundown or kind of a schedule of what's going on. And we have our itinerary, but we followed it the best that we could. But the reason we didn't have anyone on Thursday is half the church was sick. Kind of like it's been going on in Iowa and around the country. People are dying from the flu, but kind of some weird, kind of serious illnesses. So come Sunday, do you have a picture of Sunday services? This is us from, I believe this is Milwaukee to Chicago. We'll come across a picture of the congregation. I have a couple. Yeah, this will be their next building if they could run them out. I don't even know. Do you have an inside picture of this place?
Yes.
Okay. This is kind of the lighting that's going on in there. Is kind of interesting, creepy.
Darker atmosphere in there. Of course, this is a Catholic church that we are at. This is St. Peter here, and he's holding the keys of heaven. And you can see here in the little thing that they have a little bowl or plate that you put your money into it, because what they believe is as you pay for your sins, your penance, through that Peter would open the gates of heaven for you. So it's one of the beliefs of Catholicism, where you pay your way out of hell or into heaven.
Okay. And kind of talk about this city that we were at too.
This city is Regensburg, where we were at. This city is over 2,000 years old, and it has history all the way from the barbarians and the Romans, all the way from World War I, World War II. And it's a small city. I wouldn't say it's really big, but they have a couple of different interesting things here. This is in Regensburg also, inside one of their buildings. You can see how short the doors were there. See? But compared to the doors and how short they are, you can see how short I am. So, yeah, I felt like the odd man out. This is outside of Regensburg. This is called the Danube River. And on this side of the river where the houses are, That was the barbarians' side, and on the other side of the river was the Romans' side. So if you could put yourself way back and win, and you can kind of imagine yourself being a Roman or a barbarian, and kind of looking across the river and seeing your enemy there. Really interesting. Interesting enough also is on one of their hotels. It's called the David and Goliath Hotel, and they have a big...
Wonder why.
Yeah, they have a big picture of that painted on the side of their wall. This is also interesting. This is also in Regensburg. So outside of their houses and storefronts, you will see some golden cobblestones. And on the golden cobblestones, you will see a name, a date, and...
I think it was a different language, a little
Yeah.
Hebrew or something in there.
But what that represents is the person who lived in that household, or the person who lived inside of that storefront. The golden cobblestone means that during World War II, they helped fight against the Germans. They helped fight against the Nazis, and they were helping Jews escape. So they kind of gave them that honor of putting a golden cobblestone in front of their house or in front of their door. Because most Germans, true Germans, if you could say that, were actually against Hitler and what he was doing. Not all of them were for Nazism and for things like that.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this, the first place we stopped was, it kind of looked subway-ish. It just had a building built over it and a little Roman guard painted on the glass door. And we went through and it's just an old wall, but they built another wall and another building over it. And I don't know what they were supposed to be building at that time, but through this city, as they're building new buildings, and they just use the foundations that were there, and we may come across a picture here, but they realized that they were building on like historical things from thousands of years ago, so they'd stop, and it would take some time to bring someone in to study it, and they'd figure out kind of the history behind it, and so it may take another year or two before they continue working on these buildings. And do you have any of the towers that were there also? In these next pictures, let's see what's next. I believe this was the church also. Down at the picture of the river, this was on the Roman side, and this, I think it may even be here in the itinerary, but it's the 1,300-year-old Bratwurst house. They've been doing the same thing for 1,300 years as trade routes would open up on the river. They would be making these brats for the workers there and those people that are traveling the river. And then when that bridge was built, it was probably 1,000 years old, I believe, when they started. Then all they did all day was cook these bratwursts for the workers there, and they'd just come up to this little shop, get their bratwursts, and continue working. So they've been doing the same thing, same recipe, and I didn't see much more on the menu than the bratwurst, so there wasn't much going on in this little hut of a place, but that was pretty good. I believe, and we were in that city on Friday is when we were touring that, and then Saturday we hit the streets with Todd Lepedo. I believe Bob came out with us later that evening, but most of the time he was taking care of little Reagan. She's about 18 months, 2 years old, and so he was home taking care of her while Kelly was teaching English. And so we hit the streets running. I may show you a couple pictures of some of the signs that we came across, and there soliciting isn't illegal. I think you'd either be fined or arrested if you're messing with someone's mailbox in the States, but there, that's all we did. We'd go from mailbox to mailbox, throwing in these flyers for, I think at this time we were advertising the barbecue coming up in May, correct? Yeah. Okay, they've got a barbecue. Barbecue is not a thing that they really do in Germany, so it's a big American thing, and I think they've been doing it for 2 or 3 years now. This may be just their second year.
Third year.
Third year? Okay. So they've had a couple hundred people that just do it in a parking lot. They'll cook all this meat and just advertise it American barbecue, and they'll get tons of people coming in, and they'll be able to share the gospel with them. So we were passing out these flyers to get people to come to that. That'll be in May, so we can continue praying for that. But this is just one of the maps of the areas that we hit. And we were out there for a couple hours with Todd, and then it was Daniel Spencer and I. And I think in the morning Jackson was out there, which he was kind of my buddy for this trip, because if you're going door to door to Germany and you open the door and you say hello, which hello kind of is understood in German, but the rest isn't. So I don't know how you invite someone to church or to a barbecue if you don't know German. So Jackson was a good interpreter. So I kind of just wanted to keep him close to me. I think this is once we got to the top of the hill, but I believe if this is the right picture, is this village that we kind of handed out? Or is this later on? Oh, this may be at the castle. Okay. So that was that was Saturday when we were passing out the flyers. Sunday, they just have a Sunday morning service, and this particular Sunday, I think it was just because it was a couple weeks before Easter, and come Easter, a lot of the congregation would be gone with family or out of the area. Do you have a picture from Sunday coming up here? Hey, there we go. All right, here's the choir. This is them practicing after church, if I'm thinking right. We had the Sunday morning service. It was about half empty, and I was thinking that was just normal, but I was hearing a lot of names of the people that were sick. And it was awesome to see 100% of the congregation. I think there was just one guy that had to leave because his wife was sick. But other than that, it was about 100% of the congregation go from the pews to up front right after the service. And they practiced a couple choir songs and read a couple scripture. And from there, we went and had lunch. And then a couple hours later, we headed to a nursing home where they did a whole program. I think they only do it once or twice a year. But the people at the nursing home, the workers and the people that are living there, are all asking them to come back more often than those 2 times a year. And I think this is just because it was closer to Easter, so it was kind of an Easter service. But it was awesome to see the whole church get involved in that. And if Spencer doesn't have a picture, do you have a picture of the nursing home also?
Right here.
Go ahead.
This is at the nursing home where they were having their Easter service. The guy at the mic right there, his name is Michael Falkenberg, and he is a guest preacher that was at the church the first Sunday we were there. That is one of their members. This is Todd Lepedo, the American missionary with Bob Radink. He's like his associate pastor at that church.
Okay, so this will be another day, but from there, that service lasted about an hour and a half, I would say. It was a great turnout. I'll see if I can find another picture if we have enough time. But this nursing home, I guess we were kind of more in the dining hall, but the nursing home had 3 layers. And so if you're looking from where the choir was and you looked at the people, you'd see the floor all covered in people, and then there'd be a balcony, and people were just coming out of their rooms and they were listening and getting the gospel and hearing the music. And then there's another layer of balcony and everyone's coming out of their rooms, and then there's a 3rd layer of balcony. So all the balconies are covered, everyone's in their wheelchairs or in their chair that they pulled out of their room and all listening to the gospel. And so I think, do you remember the number that we counted there?
It would be close to 100.
Yeah, I was thinking 75 or 80 people because they passed out flyers and little booklets to all the people that were there afterwards, and I think we were counting 75 or 80 people, so that was a great opportunity, and hopefully they'll be able to go in again. I'm not sure the other holiday or big day that they go in. It may be around Christmas, but that was awesome to see over the Easter. This was another church that we saw just out passing out flyers, and they seem to put them on hills. If a castle's not on the hill, then it seems like the church was on the hill, just to overlook the whole village, and we were seeing a lot of, it would all be Catholicism for the most part. I think we only saw 1 or 2 different kinds of churches, but most of them were Catholic churches dating back, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 years old. You want to talk about this? I believe this was Monday or Tuesday.
So this is... Yeah,
yep,
it is in
Nuremberg.
Nuremberg. But this is Zeppelin Field, where Hitler made some important, well, not important, but some speeches when he was getting the people rallied up against the Jews and against his agenda of what he was wanting to do. Nuremberg is an interesting city. It is the central to Germany, and it's also central to Europe. And Hitler was wanting to make the capital of the world in Nuremberg, because as Hitler was, he was wanting to be the god of the world, pretty much. And so he was trying to establish his base there. I think I might have another photo of one of the Nazi, right here. This is a Nazi Congress Hall where a lot of them met in Nuremberg. This is outside of their castle. And this street here, it goes down, and they called it like the King's Highway. No, the King's Highway, because from the bottom of the valley going up to the castle, which is on top of the hill, you had this long stretch of road that just kind of inclined in. And like Pastor Scott was talking about this morning, when they had a conquering event, they would have a royal parade going up the street towards the castle so everybody could see them walking up that King's Highway. And they had a lot of famous kings and queens who lived at this castle and would come up, and they'd always make a big glorious entrance into their reign of power. And that's why Hitler was wanting to also have that area, because he wanted to show that he was a big guy, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, we're looking at the castle a little bit.
This is the castle inside of Nuremberg.
This is kind of the entrance way. Let's see if you got another picture. So you have, we had a English translator, just the electric thing. You press the number as the pictures that you see if you've been to a museum. So we're kind of listening to that as we're walking around. But I believe there are several Marys, and I think there's a baby Jesus there too. It's a little blurry, but several Marys in here. Inside this hallway was Jesus on the cross, and then a Mary on either side, if I'm thinking right. Then this was on the bottom of the hill from the King's Highway. Obviously, then we remembered that we needed to get a picture of the food, so it's half eaten. That's another day. Okay, so where we had the food, there's a huge church building there also, kind of looked like the other big one, and there's a huge fountain. And I guess the fountain, it wasn't running because it was the winter time, but usually it's got water in it, and I guess that's a wishing fountain. But it belongs to a Catholic church. So you'll go up to this fountain, you'll throw in your coins, and the church will grant you a wish. It kind of sounds like something that you'd see at the mall or something like that. But that all comes from the Catholic Church. And during this time, we had a translator slash guy kind of giving us the tour. Can you remember his name? Was his first name Michael?
His first name was Andy.
Okay, Andy then. Do you remember his last name? Okay. Just to let you know where I'm coming from, when we were with another missionary, everyone's speaking in German, and whether they're talking to me or not, I just tell them I'm just listening for my name. And before long, the weird thing is, what's my name? See, I don't even know my name in German.
His name in German is Jonathan.
Yeah, and
for shortened, it's Yoni.
Yeah, so I tell them that I'm just listening for my name, and I can't even pronounce my own name. That's why I have Spencer do it. So with this other missionary that I kept telling that to, then I hear him with a conversation with a German, and then I hear Jonathan come into the conversation, and I knew that they were talking about me for whatever reason. He actually wanted me to hear, but I had no idea what he was talking about. I think just telling them that I'm listening for my name, which now I don't know why my name was spoken of. That's just me with the names and me with the words. But then he was telling us his passion for Germany, but specifically this city. And I think there's like 3 pastors, 3 good churches there. And the church that he's a part of, the pastor had to leave just because of some issues. And so he's praying, he's talking to us, and really like putting it on hard that someone needs to come to Germany and start churches specifically in this city. And every time he'd turn his back, then Bob's like, I don't know why he's not the preacher of this church. And I think he speaks a lot at the church also, but he put it on hard. And he kind of took us in this little house that next to the castle, where there was a well that went down about 150 meters, 120 meters. And it was the king's water, and it had come from the mountain. But he locked the door. We were in a small building in the 1,000 and 2,000 years ago, when this castle was bigger, it was put together, and people were living there. Then the people in the city didn't even know that there was a well there, because they had built this building on top of it. And so that was strictly for the king. So it's a small building. He goes in. There's not even a tour, but he brings us in. He unlocks it, closes the door, locks it, and kind of gives us the whole rundown. But he's told us that he's been able to witness to people while in that room, which kind kind of seem creepy because he locks the door behind him and then he's talking to people that they don't even know what they're getting into about the Lord. But it's awesome that he's had that opportunity just as a tour guide there. And we'll throw in the mix, hey, this whole Jesus thing and the Mary thing is huge there, but he'll give them the true gospel and give them Bible while he's giving them a tour. But the thing is, kind of what I wanted to share, and I know we're kind of running out of time if we're going to get out before midnight. Down here, there's a ton of little stands that kind of look like a farmer's market type thing, and I'll just leave it on this picture, but this is a different day. But there was another building that he pointed to, kind of across the street from the well, and I don't know if I was looking around too much, but it kind of sounded like almost like a currency exchange from the Catholic Church. Do you remember this? Okay, maybe you'll remember after I'm done, or maybe I dreamed, or maybe I made it up, because it's kind of made up sounding. But the Catholic Church, you could go into this building, you'll pay them, you'll get a new currency, and that currency, that's what you get, but you had to purchase it, and however much you spend, that's 10, 11, 12, 15 years out of hell, is how the church was making a lot of their money at that time. Does that not sound made up? Maybe I was just dreaming. Okay, see, she's saying it's true, so it's got to be true. Either we have the same dream or that's a thing that I actually heard there. But I thought that was crazy that that's how they were making their money. And I don't know. I don't know what was going on more in that city, but I would think it'd be a pretty poor city because I wouldn't want to go to hell for even a second. So I think I'd be giving all my money, selling all that I had so I could buy the currency and stay out of hell even longer. But it was crazy what was going on there along with the wishing well. This is in Austria, and I'll let you kind of talk about Daniel. I got Daniel down. That's an easy name. Okay, go on.
This is missionary Daniel Brown, and him and his wife have been wanting to actually hit the country of Liechtenstein, which is a country between Austria and Switzerland. It's kind of like in the middle there. But the Lord led them to Austria for now. They are located in southern Austria, so they kind of say that they live in the country. They have a river which runs up all the way up and down their country and into Germany and parts of Switzerland, I believe. And it's called the Rhine River. So the ministry that they're getting into right now is just going up and down the river, handing out gospel literature and trying to reach the people that live by the rivers. When we were here in Austria with Daniel Brown, we were passing out gospel tracts. We were going to go to mailbox, but we stopped at a little restaurant to eat lunch, and this place was absolutely packed because school had just let out and everybody was going home from work, and so we saw that the streets were crowded and packed. So he said, you know what, game changer, we're going to go just into the streets and just start handing out these gospel tracts. So we got to go up to them, and he said, most people in foreign languages get to speak two languages, or they speak two languages, and most of the time it's their native tongue in English. So he said, go up to them and ask them, hey, can you speak English? Because most of them, if they can, they want to have the exercise of getting to get to speak their second language. So they said they'd be thrilled if you get to speak to them in English. So we're going up to people, hey, can you speak English? They would say, oh, you know, a little bit. So we try to hand them a gospel tract, and they'd be like, oh, no, you know, like, we can't do that. But if we were to say, like, hand them a gospel tract, they wouldn't take it. Then we said, do you speak English? Then they would take it. So we'd ask them to take it first, and then if they wouldn't, we'd say, can you speak English? They would take it. So and then John got to talk to a lady who believed that he was trying to sell her shoes or something like that. Because on the front of the gospel tract is a picture of two boots, and in between the boots is a Bible standing up. All she saw was the boots, so he thought that she thought that he was out there selling shoes. So she was like telling him like all these different things, like, yeah. You can't see that, but I guess that's our conversation getter, is a bunch of old shoes. I think some guy's like, hey, those are nice shoes, I'll take some of those. So hopefully they'll get the gospel and maybe a pair of shoes if they so desire. And this is a coffee shop that we got to stop in. What's funny there is he gets like an espresso. His cup is about this big. Daniel and John order hot chocolate, so they get cups about that big. I order coffee, and I get a cup about this big. So I'm like, next time I'm going to order either espresso or hot chocolate.
Next time. I think this was in Austria, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. This is kind of us going back through Switzerland to Germany. I think this is actually Liechtenstein. This is where we ate that day, and we kind of were taking a picture straight down at our food because the teenagers came in and we could barely even sit down, let alone move. So we're just all huddled in our little circle and our little table. I think there's like 3 tables in this little restaurant, and that's when we decided that we were going to hit the streets instead of hit the mailboxes. So it was pretty awesome to talk to the people there in Austria. I know we're kind of out of time. You want us to quit it ASAP? I'm waiting for you to do the whole, like the story you told us, trying to get us done quicker. What's the name of this place?
This is the Valhalla. It's a memorial. Inside is a bunch of busts of famous Germans, composers, artists, generals, just different people that they were there in.
This was like 5 minutes from the ratings. This is just an old castle ruin on top of a hill. As we were passing out flyers, we kept looking up. I mean, for the most part it was flat, but then it was just straight up and a cliff. And then there were these ruins here. And so we kind of got to mess around over there one day. And kind of one night we set up and watched the sun go down and set up our hammocks and chilled for a little while. This is Keith Klaus. I think this is, what is this, Monday, Tuesday? Wednesday? When were we painting? This is the missionary we painted for. We painted his office, where Spencer and Daniel painted the office. I just went in there to get candy. I was painting, but I was in the kitchen and I was doing things close to the ground where if I messed up, no one would really notice unless they're looking underneath the heater. But we had a Bible study there. This is the guy who kept saying Jonathan when he was trying to get my attention while he was talking German. And he's a little prankster. They had a castle in their city close by also, and I think there's another joining city with a castle also. Okay, we're jumping back a little bit. This is what we ate with the gypsies. I guess they said if we didn't get any food, which we were kind of still full. What day was this? I thought we had a pretty big meal, but none of us were really hungry. But the guy kind of leading the Bible study with the gypsies said if we don't eat, then we're not allowed to leave. So I guess it's kind of offensive if we don't eat what the gypsies prepare. So we went and kind of got one of everything. Then I realized the gypsies didn't even have one of everything. So I think it was a scam to get rid of the food or something. This is inside the castle, this is inside of the castle, just what the city looked like. This is from the tower. Andy, you said? Andy took us up there, or I guess he gave us a tour while he was on the ground, and he was talking on the phone with Bob, and he told us where to look, yet he wasn't even up in the tower with us, so that was kind of strange, but he knew his stuff for sure. This is in Liechtenstein. This is the Prince's Castle, and we went up. The picture that you saw on the back of the bulletin is this castle. We went up the mountain, we got the picture, and then we kept going up the mountain where it was snow-covered. I was excited when I could pronounce Liechtenstein correctly, so you're going to hear me say Liechtenstein like 20 more times before the end of this. This was with the gypsies also. It was pretty awesome that they're serving glass bottles of Coca-Cola. This was just a little dessert that we got at the grocery store near the Ratings. This is the Ratings Church hymnal. I didn't even talk about what happened that first Sunday. From the nursing home, we had another hour or 2 hour delay. Then we went to, I'm not drinking there. I don't know why you threw that picture in there. This is Chicago. This is me drinking tea in Chicago. I didn't have to flash my ID for any of the tea, so I think it was pretty safe. But after the nursing home, then we went to kind of a school for American exchange students, and I'm not sure all that they were learning in these classes, but I think a few times a year then Bob's able to go there and give a little Bible study towards the evening on a Sunday night. And so we had Sunday morning service, we had the nursing home, then we headed there, and just from us being there from Thursday to Sunday, I think I didn't hear Daniel say anything, but Spencer and I felt pretty weird hearing English all of a sudden, even though we hadn't heard much German. I guess more on Saturday when we were walking around the the castle, but it was pretty weird hearing English and everyone was just from the States. This is back in Chicago. We'll skip that. This is somehow I got stuck in the nursery while the parents were talking outside the door. This is Daniel's soon after his lesson, I believe, or I think we had a fellowship with a couple of the missionaries there. And for some reason, it's like they never knew that jump rope was a thing, so they're actually like fighting over who gets the jump rope first. And like, well, they should sleep well that night, because that went on for like an hour and a half, it seemed, and they're fighting over who gets the jump rope next. What am I looking at here? Okay, this is on the border. This is back at Daniel Brown's church in Germany, but it's about an hour from the Austria border. We had a Bible study there after going to Austria, Liechtenstein, and coming back through Switzerland. We had one guy that was a refugee, I believe, from Africa. And I think they normally have maybe half a dozen or 10 of them. What time do you want me to stop? Because I could jump to Monday.
Once you flip through the pictures here a little more quickly,
I'm not going to go into it anymore.
Take a few minutes to tell what the Lord taught.
Okay. His church is kind of interesting. He was telling us he started just doing a Bible study, and it ended up being with a lot of refugees instead of Germans. And before long, they were asking, what can we do? What can we give? And from that little Bible study, then it's pretty much grown to a church, and they're about to move out of that building. It's a pretty small building, but they packed it out, it sounds like, on Sundays. But that just started from a little Bible study that I think kind of has to do with the other missionaries around. This is us passing out flyers. I think this was in that first historical city. I think this is back where the castle was. And that's down the King's Highway. Hope you guys are fast lookers. That's an airplane. That must be from Canada. That's where all our luggage got detoured or didn't move from Canada. They had to send it on another plane. Something that I noticed, trying to think. There's a lot of things I noticed. Daniel mentioned how clean it was. There were solar panels on like probably 80% of the houses there. There were fields full of solar panels. I was thinking that there'd be some older vehicles. Ah, my eyes. Some older vehicles there, but everything looked vehicle-wise, it all looked brand new. Just because of the laws, they have to have it inspected. If it's not if it doesn't pass, then they have to get a new vehicle or fix it up. So everything was pretty nice on that regards. But just something I noticed, not to mention, I kind of talked about it with the churches and all that's going on with the Catholic Church there and what they used to sell, how they were getting their money and things like that. But the big thing was just, Daniel said it was different from the mission trips that he's gone on. This is my first, but it was pretty awesome to see the day in and day out of the ratings. We got home from Austria and Liechtenstein and all those countries late at night. And also I got to drive on the Autobahn, and that was fun too. While the rest of the guys slept, so we went about 100 miles an hour to get home before midnight, but it's still about midnight. But we get home, I'm brushing my teeth downstairs. We're up in their room, and Bob comes down, and he's like, I don't know what's going on, but there's no water. So we were seeing like normal things that are happening with missionaries instead of everything planned, and you just go out and go gung-ho, passing out flyers and doing these different ministries. But we were seeing, I mean, when we got there, one of the rating boys was sick with a pretty bad cough. Later on, Reagan was sick. The water wasn't running that one night when we got back, so we couldn't really take showers. We couldn't brush and get freshen up from those 3-4 countries in a day. So, I don't know, it was just interesting to see. I don't know if you think superhero or everything is happy-go-lucky, but we were seeing just normal things within their life. We had one Bible study that we had to cancel because all the guys were sick. I think it's normally on a Wednesday just to give them another push halfway through the week for their work day. And so they would have a little Bible study, but that had to get canceled. But come Sunday, we saw the building full, and we had to pull out some more chairs for the congregation that was there. And that was exciting also, especially from the previous week when everyone was sick. I think I've been thinking about the trip, and it seems like these things sink in later, but I don't know exactly what the Lord has or how He's going to use this, but kind of just when I got back. Is this okay if I talk about this? But I started going to Meyer. I've been going to Meyer Hall for a year or so, and it was weird seeing or meeting English people in Germany. Not that I'm picking up on the words or my name, but it was weird to hear English. Now when we get back, I go to Meyer Hall, and I've never had a girl in my wing there. It's always guys, but I think 2 girls got arrested together, so I had to have a girl in my wing. And we go around and we read a verse from this Bible study that we had prepared. I get to one kid, and he said, I can't read. I'm like, you mean you're not a good reader? I could help you with some of the words. He's like, I can't read English, and he looks Spanish. So now I have a kid all of a sudden, and they're all English for the most part. I had a kid all of a sudden that couldn't read English. And then I get to the girl that was sitting next to him, and I realized she read okay, it was slow, but she couldn't understand English. She's from China or something. I think she's lived in New York, but obviously in Chinatown, because I think she knows more Mandarin than she knows English. And for those that I've talked to, I think very few, but I've kind of had a passion for China. And I was planning on going to Taiwan a few years back, and the dates never popped up. So I had my passport for Taiwan trip, which went into this trip, but I never had gone. So it was interesting to see. We get back, I'm expecting, well, now let's get accustomed to American lifestyle again. And then I go to Meyer Hall, and now I've got an Asian girl, and I've got a Spanish boy. And then this Thursday, I was there, and there was a new kid in there, and he barely speaks English either. He's also Asian, and I've never had that in Meyer Hall once. So it's interesting how the Lord takes me from Germany, and I'm trying to get reaccustomed to hearing English everywhere, and then all of a sudden the Lord brings these people up, and I don't know what the Lord's going to do with it, but it's pretty awesome that I'm kind of still in that zone of not hearing English, and now I could kind of witness to these boys and girls that are there. So it's awesome to see what the Lord's doing. I don't know what He's going to do all with this trip, but I've just been noticing these little things already since we've been back. So it's a blessing, and I thank you for supporting us.
So I'd like to also say thank you for letting us go and giving us the support to go. A couple of different things that I've learned over there is when we first got there, they gave us, all of us, a journal here. And what he told us was, I want you to fill it out with different things that the missionaries that we're going to be meeting. If they have bits of wisdom, if they have something to tell you, write it down. So I was able to write down a couple of things. I won't go through it all, just maybe a couple here. But one of the things that Keith Klaus said was, God uses faithful people. Be busy doing what God wants you to do, where you're at the time you're doing it, and God will open the doors when He wants you to move. It's just talking about being there, being faithful. And one of the verses that I read here before we went on the trip was in Galatians, where it said, and let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season ye shall reap if ye faint not. So that kind of fit where he said, be busy doing what you're doing when you're there. And when He wants you to move, He'll open the doors. Another thing was when we were with Andy going through the tour, he says to be successful in your Christian life, the power is in the prayer, or prayers in the, To have any success or power in your work for the Lord, you must be a man of prayer. Where prayer focuses, power falls. He said pray about everything. He was really emphasizing prayer. Sorry about that. Another thing was Bill Ensley said, don't just talk, or just don't tour the world, get into the culture, experience the people, and love them for who they are. Sometimes we can get excited about going to a new place, going to a new country. I want to try the food, I want to see the sights, doing all these different things, but people is what makes ministry. People is what makes the world really. I can go over here and try different foods. I can even go in America and try different foods that I've never had before, see new sights in America. But what makes a place is the people you meet. And that's why they go over there in the first place, to be missionaries. They're not going over there for the culture. They're not going over there for different things. They're going over there to reach other people. If that makes sense. Another thing that Bill Ensley says, get closer to the Lord, period. Don't work on other things until you get closer to God, because the things that you work on won't stick unless you work on your relationship with God first. The last thing was when we were with Daniel Brown in the Bible study there in Austria. He let us have a chance to give something that we learned in devotions that morning. And I was in 1 Samuel chapter 17, and this is when David is going to face Goliath. He's going to fight Goliath, and the thing that he did, he was trying to figure out who this guy was. So he was going around asking the different people, you know, who is this guy? Why is he defying my God? And he goes out there, and the king gets word of it. So he brings in David, saying, you know, I want to speak to him. And he says, and Saul said to David, "Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he be a man of war from his youth." Saul was supposed to be the defender of Israel, the one who was to fight Goliath. And Goliath had intimidated Saul, and Saul was out of the will of God because Saul had not been living right. And when you're out of the will of God and you're not serving God the way you should be, there's going to come along somebody who's going to do the job you're supposed to be doing because God's work is going to be done. So a new Christian will come along, or a person who is doing the will of God will come into our lives doing the work that we should be doing, and we'll get offended because they're making us look bad. So what the first thing we'll do is we'll try to discourage them in the work of the Lord that they're doing because we don't want them to make us look bad. And so Saul is saying, you know, you can't go. But then David convinces him by showing him the things that God had been working on in his life, how he defeated the lion, how he defeated the bear. And so then he says, okay, if I can't discourage him, I'm going to try to trip him up a little bit. I want you to put on my armor. I want you to, you know, put this on, go in my armor. And one of the things that Daniel Brown said was, don't wear anybody else's armor, because what I'm going through spiritually is something that you're going through we go through different things. What I'm going through spiritually is not the same thing you're going through spiritually. So we can't wear other people's armor because that's not going to work. We all have different growths in Christ. And it was that's something that helped me a lot. The trip really impacted me in the sense of working with people and different things like that. At my one job, I'm working with a lot of people from Myanmar and Cambodia and Thailand in that area. And a lot of them have been asking me questions about the Bible and about God. And they've been telling me, like, a lot of people, they've been telling me that they serve millions and millions of gods. Like, what makes your one God different? And I said, well, my God, first of all, rose from the dead, and he is alive forevermore, never to die again. And that separates him. But also, he was God in the flesh. God sent him from heaven to dwell on earth. The other ones were man who decided to become God. But Jesus was God and came to the earth. So that's kind of a difference there too. Well, all the difference in the world. So what has really been working on my mind is to start learning the language of Karen. It's a language that a lot of Oriental people speak. I think a lot of people over there can speak that same language. So I've been wanting to learn that language and just kind of see where that goes from there. So.